contribution. We will then go straight to the wind-ups. Peter Aldous.
Thank you very much, Mr Deputy Speaker. I thought for a moment you had forgotten me, but that's greatly appreciated. The purpose of this bill, as my honourable friend and fellow Suffolk MP, the member for Suffolk, said right at the beginning, is to put on the statute book many of the tax and spending decisions announced by my right honourable friend, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, in his autumn statement, with some others being deferred to the spring finance bill in 2023. My right honourable friend, the Chancellor, was confronted with an incredibly difficult challenge on the 17th of November. In so many respects, he was between a rock and a hard place, though I believe generally he struck the right balance and delivered the budget that the nation required in these very precarious times. He was right to protect the most vulnerable and to provide additional funding for health and social care and for education, though with the latter, I feel he should also have included further education in colleges, which is so important in improving the UK's productivity and providing the many and not the few with the opportunity to participate in those proceeds of growth that we are so elusively seeking at the moment. That said, he has appointed Sir Michael Barber to provide a skills reform programme, and he is also to be commended for confirming support for Sizewell C and for providing Suffolk with a devolution deal, and to also committing to a step change in the drive to improve the energy efficiency of our existing homes and businesses. My right honourable friend had no alternative, I feel, other than to introduce levies on both oil and gas producers and electricity generators. But this is where I'm going to focus much of my remainder of my speech, Mr. Deputy Speaker. There is a need in doing so to avoid any unintended consequences in the way that these levies operate, which could deter inward investment, which is so important to ensuring our energy security, meeting our net zero targets that enable us to tackle climate change, and in regenerating the economies of many coastal communities, such as the Lowestoft and Waveney constituency that I represent. Mr Deputy Speaker, clauses 1 to 3 of the bill detail the proposed changes to the oil and gas profits levy, the raising of the rate of the levy to 35%, the reduction in the investment allowance from 80 to 29%, though this remains at 80% for investment on upstream decarbonisation, and the extension of the levy to 2028. This latter provision does appear somewhat random, as it takes no account that the very high gas prices we have in them may have fallen by then, and I would hope that my honourable friends, if we are in a very different place in 2028, and we should remember that only a few years ago the gas price was right on the floor, that they would actually look forward to bring that sunset clause forward. I note also the assessments carried out by HMRC that conclude that levy is not expected to have a significant macroeconomic impact on the level of business investment, and that the impact on business will only extend to around 200 companies operating in the UK and on the UK continental shelf. These findings, Mr Deputy Speaker, are very different to those of Offshore Energy UK, who are the trade representative of many of these businesses and who also provide the secretariat for the APPG for offshore oil and gas, which I chair. They state that these changes impact not just North Sea operators, but also hundreds of companies in the supply chain, which are so important to coastal communities like Lowestoft, but actually extend right across the UK. These businesses provide specialist services in such areas as marine engineering, deep-sea diving, and subsea communications, which are not just important, Mr Deputy Speaker, in the oil and gas sector, but are also vital in those new emerging industries of offshore wind carbon capture and storage, and hydrogen production. Offshore Energy UK point out that there are plans for industry, that's private business, to invest £200 billion by 2030, including in those low-carbon technologies which are needed to drive the energy transition. There is a real worry that disruption to the tax system could deter this vital investment. Mr. Deputy Speaker, whilst the electricity generator levy is not covered by this bill, and I welcome my honourable friend the Minister's commitment earlier to engage with industry before detailing the government's proposals, the bill's provisions and the implications should be considered, that levies and its provisions and its implications should be considered alongside the energy, oil and gas profits levy. That's because today the renewables and the oil and gas industries are inextricably interlinked and intertwined. There is a real worry in the renewables sector that the electricity generator levy may deter the investment that is needed to end our reliance on fossil fuels. The companies that will be affected are those to whom we are looking to invest billions in order to accelerate the renewable energy transition. It is only, Mr. Deputy Speaker, by attracting this private sector investment that the UK will be able to successfully grow its capacity in renewable energy. To meet our 2030 and 2050 targets, we need to attract more private investment and not to deter it. With this in mind, it is concerning that electricity generators are due to miss out on an investment allowance for new wind projects. If we are going to be global leaders in offshore wind, which includes being pioneers in floating offshore wind technology, there is a strong case for tax incentives to encourage new investment. This does not mean helping energy firms avoid tax, but it does mean encouraging them to invest in the UK's clean future for the benefit of the environment, for the benefit of our future prosperity, and for the benefit of our energy security. There does need, Mr. Deputy Speaker, to be a windfall tax, but it must be introduced in a form which is predictable, transparent and fair, so as not to undermine investor confidence. Mr. Deputy Speaker, in conclusion, I fully recognise that the enormous cost of shielding both people and businesses from the worst impact of the gas crisis requires a windfall tax. However, as I've mentioned, there is a concern that the current and updated proposals for the oil and gas levy and the new emerging plans for the electricity generator levy may or might have unintended consequences of deterring investment at a time that we urgently need it, impacting negatively on the key policies of energy security, combating climate change and levelling up. It is good news, Mr. Deputy Speaker, that the government have undertaken to carry out a long-term review of the tax treatment of the UK oil and gas production. I would also ask them to, with regard to the oil and gas profits levy, to only keep it in place while there is a windfall and not until the 31st of March 2028 if those conditions don't continue up to that time. There is much work to be done to create the stable, long-term fiscal environment that is required in order to maximise inward investment. Moving to net zero, Mr. Deputy Speaker, is a monumental challenge. The state of the public finances is such, more than ever, we need to unlock private finance if we're going to meet our targets. Government and business must work together to put in place the long-term, stable tax regime that ensures that companies make a full but fair contribution. Until recently, government and business were working well together. A clear industrial strategy was in place, which had culminated in the 2019 offshore wind sector deal and the 2021 North Sea transition deal. There is an urgent need, Mr Deputy Speaker, for the government and the energy industry to renew their marriage vows. And I urge my right honourable friend, the Chancellor, and his very good team sitting on the front bench to set about this task immediately. Thank you.